Democratic presidential candidate Beto O'Rourke, words pointing the finger at the president, and he's not the only one. We've assembled a special panel to discuss guns in America. University of Maryland professor and Democratic strategist Jason Nichols, former deputy assistant to President Trump and host of America First on Salem Radio, Dr. Sebastian Gorka, Sinclair political commentator Misha, and the founder and president of the Crime Prevention Research Center, Dr. John Lott. We are glad you're all here, panel, but we do want to mention something. We offered opportunities to many anti-gun or gun control advocates, the Brady Camp, the Third Way, Giffords, and the Community Justice Action Fund to share their points of view and debate with us right here. Guess what? They all canceled, choosing not to be represented in this conversation. They're not the only ones. Go to our Facebook page to see a full listing of left-leaning lawmakers, pundits, and more who have either agreed to be on this show but seem to always have a conflict of interest or just never respond to all our requests. This list is vast, and it's on that Facebook page. Anyway, I'm bringing it out to you guys. Dr. Lott, I want to bring you on. You're the gun expert here. Tell us, is there any gun law, and let's be fair and let's be unbiased, or are there any gun laws that we can beef up that may have saved some lives in either El Paso or Dayton?
I think encouraging more people to carry guns. Police are important, but they can't be there all the time. I think the thing that upsets me the most is that I think the proposals that keep on being put forward aren't serious. We have background checks on the private transfers of guns. I want somebody to tell me one mass shooting this century that would have been stopped if that law had been in effect.
I want to move on and get everyone else away, but tell us again, very, very importantly, why are stronger, more rigid, and more vast background checks, why is that bad for, let's say, lower-income people?
Well, I'm not sure I would describe it that way. What these background checks would do is background checks on the private transfers of guns. It's the same background check that you get if you buy it at a dealer. It's just they're doing it in different places. Here's the problem. We're in Washington, right next to Washington, D.C., where they have this law already. It costs $125 if I were to sell you a gun in Washington, D.C. That's not going to stop you or I from being able to go and get a gun. But my research tells me the people who benefit most from being able to protect themselves are the people who are most likely victims of violent crime.
All right,
that tends to be poor blacks who live in high-crime urban areas.
Let's talk about that. What about that, Jason? If you can't afford $125 additional for a background check, aren't you going to buy one on the street?
So I agree. I disagree with some of the things that were stated. I think we do need background checks. I think if you look at what happened in Gilroy, California, the man had a 75-round drum connected to his weapon. There's no reason, you don't need that for personal protection, to have that.
What about low-income people that can't afford to pay an extra $125 for a background check? Should they not get a gun and be less safe than someone?
Who says that? First of all, one of the things that we have to understand, and I'm pro 2A, you know this, but at the same time, there's no evidence that having a gun makes you safer. As a matter of fact, lots of the evidence says the opposite.
I'll let you guys get in. Go ahead, doctor. Is there?
Well, I mean, I think there's a huge amount of evidence. I suppose you'd be pointing to these studies that go and look at people who died in or near a residence over the course of the year, Kellerman stuff. The problem is that they just assume that if a gun was owned in the home and somebody died from a gunshot, that it was that gun that was used in the home. When people have gone back and looked at that, they find actually 86% of the deaths were from a weapon that was brought in from the outside.
Let me move on.
Fixing that one thing reverses the results.
I want to move on. Dr. Gorka and Misha, there's something very, very troubling going on in the media right now. Okay. The media is using this as talking points. They're crushing each other. They're calling each other racist. They're calling each other horrible names. Can I get Reza Aslan's tweet? This used to be a CNN talking head. Look at what he tweeted. He actually tweeted about exterminating Kellyanne Conway and MAGA participants. Right. Your thoughts?
We have people on left-wing media who are saying because the president wants to lower the national flag to honor the dead, he's somehow signaling that he likes Adolf Hitler. The left has gone insane. And we see that by people like Beto O'Rourke, who's an irrelevance politically, who is dancing on the graves of the dead when he is trying to make himself relevant and says, if you vote for Donald Trump in 2020, there will be another El Paso. There is no excuse for this behavior. And at the end of the day, Dr. Lott is absolutely right. There's not one piece of legislation that anybody is suggesting that would have stopped any of the mass
Now,
killings.
Misha, you've done some commentary saying the exact opposite of this, have you not?
Absolutely. And I feel as though this president, within his rhetoric, has created an environment that breeds a lot of hatred, specifically towards those who are at the border. When you say that there is an infestation, when people think about infestations, they think about what you have to do to stop that. That means extermination. That means being on guard. That means having your own force available to get rid of it. And I think that when you see someone like the guy in Texas who used the exact same language this president uses, then you have to sit back and
What about the guy in Dayton? What about Betts in Dayton, who was actually a Bernie and supporter and a follower of
But he didn't have.
Hold
on, guys. But the question is, if Trump is responsible for El
then
Paso,
Warren and Sanders.
is Warren and Sanders responsible for Dayton?
That's
Absolutely
a
not,
false.
because that's a false equivalency. And there's a problem here because when we're saying that you have a guy who literally left a manifesto that had the exact same language this president has used.
In Dayton, he did not have a manifesto, and he did not say, "I'm doing this shooting."
He actually,
that connecting it to Elizabeth Warren.
The guy in Ohio had other issues
Sebastian.
completely. This guy had a rape list.
Can
He
we
had a
just
kill
stop
list.
for a
He
second
could have been
because
stopped
I need
multiple
to cut
times
to the
before he killed
center of
anyone.
this. Do you really think, hand on your heart, that Donald Trump, when he said infested, was talking about human beings? Are you going to say that publicly?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Really?
When he said it, he was talking about human beings. Yes, sir.
Then we can't have a conversation. This is absolutely
But I mean,
outrageous.
you look at the manifesto.
When he called them rapists, murderers, and all that, he
You
was
look
talking
at
about human
the
beings.
El Paso guy.
And they are rapists. Do you know what 80% of women are assaulted?
All Mexican immigrants are racist and murderers?
Of women are assaulted or
By
raped
Mexican
who are
immigrants?
trafficked. Who are trafficked
By Mexican immigrants and the border trying to get asylum.
Let's stay on topic. Let's stay on topic. Hang on, Jason. Let's stay on topic. Go ahead, Doctor. You were talking about the manifestos. There was, in fact, a manifesto from the shooter in Dayton.
But well, I mean, the one for El Paso that she was talking about, when you read it, what you find is that his arguments for why he didn't want immigrants had nothing to do with Trump. He basically was an environmentalist and was worried about too many people coming in and destroying the environment. The same thing with the New Zealand guy. They were racist, but in this case you had left-wing environmentalists who were racist because they didn't want to have immigrants coming in. But I did want to say one comment, and that is one can support background checks, but make them so that they don't hurt minorities.
All right, guys, I want to do this because we're going to have this panel to stick around. They're going to come back later because I don't know what the big pushback to background checks is. I mean, if you need a driver's license to drive a car, which could be deadly, I don't know that this is such a bad idea. If it's such a leap for conservatives to say, hey, just get a license for owning a gun as well. Hang in there. I know that's going to be provocative. Ahead.
I'm from Southern Ohio. People have rifles. They have handguns. Like we're not people that, like, we're not East Coast or West Coast folks that say no guns at all. I said, but like, I don't understand why any citizen would need that gun.
The mayor of Dayton, Ohio poses a good question. Why do citizens need a firearm like the one used by the Dayton gunman? It was a .223 caliber firearm, legally purchased, I might add, fired 41 rounds in 30 seconds. Back to our panel, John. Deer hunting. Listen, I'm going to go out here on a limb. I'm a big advocate, Second Amendment advocate. But do I need an AK? Do I need a semi-automatic to kill a deer?
Well, the vast majority of guns owned in the United States are semi-automatics. And there's a benefit from people having semi-automatics just in terms of self-defense. I mean, if the alternative is going to have a manually loaded gun, and I have somebody attacking me and I have to fire more than one shot.
How about a large, long-range rifle? I mean, do I want that? I mean,
I don't think anybody's using long-range rifles for these types of things because they're heavy. But
the Second Amendment isn't about hunting.
Right.
It never was. It was the last guarantee of our freedom against an oppressive state. There's a reason that in Venezuela 5 years ago they took away private gun ownership. There's a reason that Stalin did it. There's a reason that Hitler did it. This isn't a theory, it's history. Mm-hmm. And if people don't understand, the Second Amendment was written by our founding fathers in a way that has nothing to do with whitetails, then you have no idea of how America was created.
I'm a defender of the Second Amendment, Sebastian.
Me too,
but let me ask you this. Do we need bump stocks, or do we need a magazine that can hold 100 rounds?
Well, this is the question. Who's going to decide what we do and don't need? It's not going to be the Democrats who are doxing
Someone
us,
decides
like
my speed
Castro.
limit.
We're going to trust the Democrats who have congressmen who are doxing people
No,
like Castro
but
last
that-
night
that
to
has
intimidate
nothing to
them.
do with
I'm
the
not going to
election.
trust my Second
But
Amendment
that has
right.
nothing to do with
I'm
the
not
election.
going to trust
In 30
them.
seconds, you should not be
I
able
don't trust
to
them.
kill 9 people and
You
injure
don't get to
dozens
decide
more.
what gun I
And
get
that
to
would
own.
not have been
You don't get
possible
to
without
decide.
that type of gun.
You don't
So
get
I
to
do
decide.
think there's
And
a
I
certain
don't
level
even
of
think it's the
carnage we
gun.
decrease.
You know, one of the things that, Chris Rock used to make this joke that we don't need gun control, we need bullet control. So limiting the capacity of a magazine is you can have whatever kind of gun you
Who
want.
gets to decide?
And then
Until it becomes a
Well, no,
paperweight.
but the-
I can have one bullet a
the
year,
notion-
then it's a paperweight.
People who
I
want
mean,
to
that's
protect
absurd,
human lives are the
Sebastian.
people
No.
who
A
decide.
Who
magazine.
gets to decide?
A magazine.
You want to be able to.
Hold
So
on, guys,
what do you
hold on,
need
magazine-
75 rounds at once for?
What do I want?
Guys,
please.
You
Let's
don't-
get-
you need that to kill a
Jason,
deer, then you're not a
It's not
hunter.
about hunting.
All right, John
Okay.
Lott.
Or
Have
even
you
for personal
read the
protection.
Constitution?
A magazine-
Have you read the Constitution?
John Lott.
Okay, a
It doesn't
magazine
say white
is the
text.
Let him
simplest
speak.
part of a gun to make. I've seen people put them together in 2 minutes.
The
It's
Vietnamese did
basically
it.
a box with a spring in it.
Right.
And the notion that you're going to be able to stop people from being able to get
Well,
something like that.
Why did we push back on bump stocks then?
Because it was a feel-good measure. Look, let's be
Well,
factual
there's so many
here.
other
In
ways they can do
France-
the exact same thing that a
Look,
bunk
in
stock
France, a man
And it's-
stole a truck and killed 83 people in 1 minute.
Great point.
1
Misha,
minute.
Misha, what about that? In England, there's a problem. You know what they have a problem with?
Knives.
Not guns, knives.
Knives.
People
Yeah,
are.
there's
there-
no
there-
mass
there are-
knifings.
But
Yes, no, there are. There are.
That's
There
not
are.
mass
There are.
That's
Seven
not
five
funny.
people.
The
Open a
amount of
newspaper.
carnage you can have with a knife, one, because it requires a lot of
Truck.
energy and personal power. You're not just
Yeah.
going to get 12, 15
Do you
people
you
together
can't-
one
you
night.
can
You're
remember
gonna-
outrun a knife.
Stop. Do you remember the Christmas Day massacre in Brussels, wherever that was, where a guy, a ISIS sympathizer, took a truck and mowed down 75 people?
Nobody is
That
arguing
was
that
faster
people
than
will
a
find
bump
another
stock.
way to
Ban trucks.
weaponize an issue.
Ban
What we're saying
trucks.
is right here in these United States, our issue is assault rifles and high capacity magazines.
Because if you take those away, they'll find another method.
Right.
But it isn't the United
It's
States.
mental health is the issue.
Oh,
It's not the
no.
gun.
No,
it's
no.
not the
Oh,
truck. It's
God.
not the knife.
Actually, studies show us that less than 20% of those who commit those acts
Exactly.
of violence actually have mental health issues. So
John,
it's
is
not
that study?
at all.
Can I hear your?
not
Do,
mental.
do you have that study?
Well, I mean, about half the people that go and commit these mass shootings were seeing mental health care professionals prior to the attack. The interesting thing is that in one single case were the mental health people able to identify the individual as a danger
Can
to
I
themselves
ask you
or
something,
others.
John? And why is this? And I'm not being very sincere about this. Why are these mass shooters typically white male?
Young
What
male.
is young white
Well,
male? What's happening?
58% of the mass public shooters over the last 2 decades are whites, okay? But that's less than their share of the population. Whites make about
But
75%.
stay in the last. Let's stay in the last decade.
But it's
it's
still
a-
the same. Basically,
We here
they
why
make
though?
up a majority. but
Here's
they-
the problem. Because a mass shooter in Chicago, there's a mass shooting every weekend.
Right. Those are
And those-
gangs.
Those are gangs.
Yeah.
So
And no
what I'm
one
talking
goes
about-
with mental
I'm talking
health
about multiple deaths. I'm talking about.
Right, I know. You're
4+
talking about it
deaths.
where it's not part of some other crime, where the point is
Right.
to go and
Why
just kill
is it
people
a
for
young
instance-
white male, the typical demographic for that?
All right,
It's
why,
not.
why is
First
it
of
a
all,
person?
First of all, the average age for the shooters is in their mid-30s. You have about, you have them as old as 64. You have several that have been in their 60s. I mean, it's not. I know.
Look,
it's just like with the
there's-
assault weapons.
There's
Assault
a
weapons.
pattern. Let's look at the pattern. In the last decade, it's very clearly young men. I had Andrew Pollock on my show this week. He corrected me. The man who killed his daughter didn't have 31 interactions with law enforcement. He had 41 interactions with law enforcement before he killed Meadow. Eric, a man has a hit
Sebastian,
list, a
Sebastian,
rape
there's-
list. Nothing
there's
happens.
Probably hundred thousands of people in America who've had 41 interactions with police.
But with
who
what
aren't mass
consequence?
murderers.
No, but they
I
were
know
held
what
to it.
consequence. Why is it, Professor, that it seems to be in the last few years it's young white males that are killing multiple people.
Well, so
We
you
gotta
know,
be
there-
honest here, guys.
No,
Come
no,
on.
absolutely.
No, but
There's
We
actually
have people who want to commit suicide.
yeah.
And they want to commit suicide in a way that's going to get them attention. But that's true for young people or old people. Sometime a few decades
There-
ago.
there's-
John Lott, why have I not seen an 18-year-old African American man go in and shoot up a place and kill 40 people? Why has that not happened? There's
18
something going on that we
18%.
can't ignore.
18% of the mass public shooters over the last 20 years have been blacks.
18
Right.
Which is
population.
bigger than the
They
population.
make up
Bigger than the
13% of the
proportion of
population and 18% of the shooters.
So what? It's not color. It's not color.
Can I do this? And I don't have time to talk about this, but I want you all to just see this. This is what's scaring the heck out of me. Times Square this week, guys. A motorcycle pulled into Times Square. Look what happened. Caused a mass panic. Times Square emptied out. 22 people got hurt. They thought it was a gun going off. It was a motorcycle. In Utah, there was a shopping center. Same thing happened. Just this week, USA Today, a newspaper, evacuated their headquarters in McLean, Virginia. They thought someone had a weapon.
Right.
They evacuated. This is hysteria. We have to get a handle on this. We have to get a handle on this.
Can we deal with
quickly?
Can we deal with your thing about the
No,
background
I can't.
checks?
We have to do it again.
Because
The
you
good news is
interrupted me.
we're going to do a big town hall, and we're going to talk about guns, and we will bring you guys back and talk.